Well, hello everyone. My name is Asha Casper Hernandez. I am the founder of Diversity and National Security Network. My background is also I'm a combat veteran. I served in the Biden-Harris administration and also a former university professor, but I will be teaching at Georgetown this fall on international relations. So I'm happy to have our special guest today to interview him about national security. He is the mayor of Newport News. His name is Mayor Philip Jones. Philip Jones, thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course, Asha, thanks so much for the invite. Whenever I have an opportunity to talk to people about critical matters, especially national security, I'm always glad to jump on. So thanks for making the time.
Oh, you're welcome. So I want to open up first about your background.
Yeah.
You have an amazing background. You're one of the youngest like mayors in the nations now serving. So this is just awesome to have the opportunity to, learn about how it's like to be a young professional serving as a mayor of Newport News. And by the way, Newport News is special to me, everyone, because I went to Hampton University, so that was right next door to us, and we did everything in Newport News. So thank you so much for your service. And plus, you are a combat veteran as well. And you went to the Naval Academy. So again, tell us about yourself.
Well, I always tell everyone I'm the son of two Air Force pilots, and that's where my story really begins. My dad and mom were both Air Force Academy graduates, class of '82, and I was born in Okinawa, Japan. So we moved around a lot. I thought I was going to be a pilot, but really the Marine Corps really called to me. So I went to Annapolis. I graduated from the Naval Academy in 2012, and then I did, let's see, 6 years on active duty as an infantry officer, two deployments, one in Southeast Asia, second one in North Africa. Had a great time being a platoon commander in Company XO. Went back to the basic school as an instructor, and then decided to go to grad school. So I left active duty in the summer of 2018, but I've been in the reserves ever since. So I think it's getting on year 11, six active and five in the reserves. I love the Marine Corps. It's a large part of my identity. After leaving the military on the active duty side, I went to Harvard Business School and the Kennedy School. I really think the intersection of public and private policy is the future, and that's what I wanted to play in. That's a space that I wanted to do well in. Graduated from there. I did a year at Bain& Company in DC, and then I decided to move back home immediately and run for mayor of my hometown. It was an amazing race last year, a lot of great candidates, a lot of great policy discussions, but ultimately the voters decided to go with me. And it's been the honor of my life to be mayor of my hometown for the last 65 days or so.
Great. And what made you decide to run for office? I mean, I think I know the answer, right? Because veterans love public service
Yeah.
or service members.
No, I think just being the son of two Air Force pilots who later became missionaries, it really just boiled down to whom much is given, much will be expected and required. And I felt that the city had a lot going for it, but that we were at a critical inflection point, and I thought that I had a unique skill set that could help move the city forward. And so I tried to be future looking, X plus 5, 6, 7 years to really make sure that we can become the city that we should be.
Wonderful. So now that you are, of course, serving as the mayor,
Yeah.
you just recently visited Washington, D.C., the White House. You attended the Mayors Association's conference,
Correct.
and I was just so happy to see you there and meeting with President Biden. And could you tell us about your experience doing that? And did any like national security topics come up during your visit?
No, of course. I think it was amazing. It was amazing to meet the president in the Oval Office. Then they picked 13 or 14 mayors from across the country, and it was an honor to represent not only my hometown but also Virginia at the White House. It was an amazing week for the U.S. Conference of Mayors. We learned a lot about things that were happening, from gun violence to the mental health crisis to individuals that are unhoused and how there are some ways that we can help mitigate that. really coming together and talking to all the mayors, my brotherhood, the sisterhood of all, all the mayors coming together, something that I don't take for granted. And so amazing opportunity. And in fact, the president actually came to Virginia Beach, so the city next to mine. He came a few weeks ago to give a talk on healthcare, and he invited the 4 or 5 mayors in the area to come. So I think I've seen him 2 or 3 times in the past 2 months, and it's always a great time.
Fantastic. Was Pharrell there playing?
Pharrell was not there, but we have something in the water coming up in a few weeks. I'm sure he'll stop in for that.
Wonderful. So you mentioned two topics as you were talking about the association. One was about gun violence, and the other one was about healthcare. So in Newport News, there's a program that you guys are working on that intersects the two. Could you elaborate more about the program?
Yeah, of course. So maybe we start macro to micro, but what we've done, like a lot of other cities, is we have violence interrupting programs. So we really utilize grassroots organizations, credible messengers, I believe is the term, to actually have that credibility within the neighborhood to go back and to help minister. So that way we can avoid gun violence before it starts. I call it left of bang. We've invested, I believe, over $2 million to 25 different organizations. And we're looking forward to continue to fund that, to tweak it, to direct it, but to ensure that we're never going to arrest our way out of gun violence. That's not, or mental health. That's not how it's going to work. You're going to have to make sure that your budget reflects some of the line items that can go to ensuring that there's mental health, that individuals have the opportunity to come back and to plug back into society. And so really excited that my predecessor, Mayor Price, started the program, and I'm looking forward to continue it. Additionally, we have the budget time coming up in the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're looking to double the amount of care teams. So when you call 911, sometimes there's cops show up. Well, a lot of times you can call, and we think that it'd be better if mental health professionals showed up. Obviously, it's very, very expensive to have a sort of hybrid police and mental health team. But I've always said, sort of, show me your budget and I can show you what you prioritize in your city. So I don't think it's a revolutionary idea to have police with mental health, but I do think in Hampton Roads, we're going to put a lot more dollars toward that and hopefully be sort of the start of a national trend.
That's interesting. I like the argument about reintegration and mental health. And I was just at the White House about an hour ago, and it's interesting how President Biden literally said on the stage how when he saw what happened today in Nashville, the shootings, he automatically thought about his son Bo and about how he came home and how what he was thinking about the things he saw in Iraq and how that triggers mental health
Mhm.
issues. And it's the same kind of spin we had to think about in Nashville, those that have did survive it, but what they saw, what kind of mental health impacts that actually causes for people there. So it's an interesting spin. I like how they're integrating the two. Mhm.
No, of course. And I think the president, I think he spoke well on the issue that weapons of war probably don't belong on our streets. And hopefully we can get some legislation passed at the federal level.
Yes, absolutely. Great. So moving along, I wanted to talk. I know it's a little bit of a lighter topic, but um, I mentioned to you before about the issue involving climate change and coastal flooding. I know that recently that as part of the national security discussion, we look at all national security issues and from hard security to soft security. And one of them right now, especially in the administration, is climate change. So with combat climate change. So I know that recently there was a coastal or flooding issue in your area. Could you talk to us more about that?
Of course. So Newport News is one of the 7 cities in Hampton Roads, and we actually are the highest city. So we sit on a plateau. So there is a lot of flooding in the area. Newport News is, if it ever floods, if the Great Flood ever comes, Newport News will be the last to go. Okay. That being said, I do know our sister city of Hampton, they are having issues at Langley Air Force Base with their F-22s. So when there's a big storm, when it floods, those aircraft have to leave and be housed at different bases. So I know for Hampton, that is a massive issue that they are currently working through. I think for some of our southern cities on the south side, so Norfolk, that is obviously one of the largest bases in the world, definitely on the East Coast. Right now, they're having issues with their flooding with the ships, with the base, etc. When you look, if that base has to move, that is going to be a detriment to our entire national security strategy, especially when we talk about ships, production, East Coast hub, all those things go into it. So I know that the city of Norfolk, Mayor Alexander, they have a chief sustainability or chief resilient officer, and that is her main goal, is to make sure how can we mitigate the flood and make sure that we can take back land from the water.
Interesting. So could you elaborate more about like the combined work you work with the mayor in Hampton and also with Norfolk? I like what you just said. Could you
Yeah, of course.
elaborate more as you're dealing with this issue?
Yeah, so it's mostly a South Side and a Hampton issue, but in Hampton Roads, with there being so many cities together, so the population of Newport News is about 190,000 individuals, but the entire MSA is about 1.7 million individuals. So we meet with the mayors every other week. I would say we have a meeting Thursday on gun violence where all seven mayors and the county executives will come together and talk about, as a region, what is our regional plan, our regional approach to gun violence. So in the same line of thought, when it comes to the environment, we are mainly focused on ensuring that we have the resources necessary to maybe lift up houses on the stilts. But most importantly for this conversation is to, well, what we don't want is we don't want bases to close because they're unable to exist due to flooding, et cetera. So I know that has been a lot of the work done by former Congresswoman Loria, now Congresswoman Jen Kiggins, is to ensure that the base does not move and that they are able to stay there and be that defense in depth on the East Coast.
Interesting, interesting. That's a great point. Um, Interesting. Well, now that is a great segue to the next question about just a little more about the shipbuilding, Newport News shipbuilding point. The new, just according to the website, it says Newport News Shipbuilding is the largest industrial employer in Virginia. The Newport News Shipyard, military base near Hill Joint Base Langley in Eustis. Yorktown Naval Weapons Station and Naval Station Norfolk and Joint Expeditionary Base Little Creek, Fort Story, as well as Naval Air Station Oceana, and Norfolk Naval Shipyard and Portsmouth Naval Hospital. That's so many different mini little installations. And
Mhm.
together they support approximately over 85,000 Joint Force military personnel with an additional over 120,000 family members, over 68,000 retirees, and over 27,000 DoD personnel and civilian employees combined. So please share with us your latest work on like how is it like managing this huge shipyard project there. It's just when I was at Hampton, this was a big deal, and still to this day, it's just so important for military service members and family members overall. But could you tell us about it and give us some like operational insight on how this works?
Yeah. So it's a private shipyard. So it's a private company, but it is the largest employer in the state of Virginia. The partnership with the shipyard is very crucial to the success, to the future of Newport News. They're partners. It's a great partnership, and I'm glad to have them on board in our downtown area. When you look at Newport News shipbuilding, it is the largest, I think maybe the largest and the only builder of aircraft carriers in the United States. And we build, I think there's only two places where you can build submarines as well. So we build, I think, 90% of aircraft carriers and a third of submarines. So when you look at national security, when you look at the Indo-Pacific, when you look at the grand strategy, the grand maritime strategy, we are very important when it comes to combating the PRC in the Indo-Pacific. So I think you see SecNav here a lot. I think I just got invited to a christening ceremony of a submarine in a few weeks. So it is our number one partnership and something that as mayor I look forward to strengthening that relationship.
Great. So just give us a little bit more of the unclassified discussion, how it's important as far as countering the PRC involving the shipyard.
Yeah. So I think I know there's been a lot of dialogue, whether it's War on the Rocks or 60 Minutes, but I think this is a very important discussion. I think everyone has said the greatest threat to the United States is going to be some sort of combination of the PRC and Russia. I think when you look at the water as a domain, as a military domain, I think you can see that their navy is starting to rival ours just due to the number of ships. So what that's going to mean is that as you look at more defense bills, you're going to need to see an increase of how much carriers are built, submarines, cruisers, etc. All of that is how we're going to be able to conduct this sort of grand maritime strategy that they talk about. So it's more than just, recruiting and retention. Like the actual hard way of making ships takes a long time. And if we want to make sure that we have enough equipment ready to deploy at all times, we're going to need to see a bill that reflects that. I forgot what the four-star admiral said, but I think he said up to 1/3 of the Navy ships are always forward deployed and 1/3 are always in dry dock. And so what that means is this constant turnover, you're going to have to start replenishing the ships. I know there's been, I think the LCS, I'm not gonna say it was a failure, but I think it was a lot of money that was spent, and we've not seen the results from the LCS and then from the new class of destroyer. So I think the Department of the Navy, in partnership with private developers, et cetera, we need to figure out how Newport News Shipyard can plug into the overall strategy of combating the PRC in the Indo-Pacific.
So it's pretty much a strategic location when it comes to the maritime strategy overall.
Yes, if you want aircraft carriers, you have to come to Newport News.
Right, right. That is so interesting. And so in terms of the increase, you said you'll probably see that over the years. So that's definitely, you're saying, reflective in the National Defense NDAA overall, the Authorization Act.
Exactly. I think if you look at the NDAA right now, I think you see a lot of federal, I think it's Congressman Gallagher, a lot of like really it's just a lot of the veterans have said, hey, this needs to be at the forefront of everyone's mind because if we do not get this correct, nothing else really matters.
Right, right. Very good. Yeah, that is true. Nothing really matters. Yeah, that is the main effort that everybody is talking about in terms of our looking at our maritime deterrence overall too. If we fall
Exactly.
behind this, we lose in terms of deterrence overall. So it's extremely invaluable or just strategic that we maintain that that power, that naval power in place at all times. And because that overall helps with our strategic competition with the PRC. Interesting. I would also want to ask you too, as far as like um, when it comes to national security, the one thing that's very important in terms of the community of it is just excuse me, the veterans and military families. And
Mhm.
so again, you have a huge veterans, military family, service member community in Newport News. And I just wanted to kind of ask you about what kind of activities do you work on with the veterans, the local vets community, or service members. And I will tell you too, I do have a treat for you. There's a group called the AVC, the American Veterans Committee, that would love to come down to Newport News and have, coordinate some sort of event with the city of Newport News because we want to show our support for the veterans in the community. But yeah, could you tell us about some activities that you work on with the veterans community?
No, of course. So in Newport News, the average age of the veterans, I think, is 55. So it's mostly a retired crowd, not younger individuals. We do have Fort Eustis is technically part of Newport News, but they are on the north part of the city. They don't really come down to the southern part. I think when you look at quality of life, that is something that impacts more than just veterans. That's sort of everyday citizens. I know a few governors before they made it a priority to not tax, military retirement and those sort of things. But I think what I would like to focus on is from the entire Hampton Roads, you see once someone gets out of the military, once the EAS, they just pick up and they just leave. So the amount of talent that is exiting the military every year, year over year, is at its highest rate ever. I would love to see Newport News and other cities in Hampton Roads make great strides in making programs that can retain that talent here and plug those veterans getting out after a 4 or 5 year stint immediately into the workforce. That's something that I would love to see in the next 2 or 3 years.
Interesting. So you would like to for them to retain it more. Okay. So they tend to leave out of Newport News to look for employment or
Yeah, I think across Hampton Roads, I don't think you see that many veterans stay, and it's probably due to a lack of jobs. I mean, I think people either go back to their home of record, they go GI Bill route, or they go to the DMV area and try to find sort of federal employment. And I think the question is, how do we create pipelines that I'm EASing, I want to stay here. What are my options? I think we already have the beginning of a pipeline, but we have to figure out ways to extend that pipeline.
so you serving as the mayor and also you are a vet, how there's evidently a natural connection with this community. Can you tell us some advantages of just being a vet, serving as an elected official and helping to work on this problem?
Yeah, I think it all comes down to servant leadership. The Marine Corps taught me everything that I need to know on leadership, whether it was at the Naval Academy with my Navy chief, who was an EOD, uh, 25 years as an EOD chief, or my gunny in the Marine Corps, or my first company commander, or my battalion commander. I think the Marine Corps sort of molded me, and it's a blessing that I get to use those skills on a day-to-day basis to help the community that sort of raised me and informed me and all those good words. It is a military sort of community, so we're basically a federally subsidized locale. So what that means is if there's a recession, it doesn't really affect us because of the shipyard, et cetera. But what that means is we have a lack of, we're not required to have innovation to get other businesses because it's like we can just sort of be stagnant forever. And so I think it's important in my role is I understand the military side of the house. I understand the business side of the house from the private sector. What are some ways that I can help spur innovation in the city? And that's sort of been the plan for the next couple of years.
Amazing. As I'm talking to you, I'm thinking of other veterans that are elected officials. One, Governor Westmore,
Yeah.
and so he has a nice spin to it too. He understands the veterans community and he understands bringing in the private
Yeah.
sector as well because he comes from the private sector and he understands finance and business affairs, et cetera, et cetera. So that's really, really great point there. Great. Is there any other national security topics that you would like for us to touch on um, before we end the interview?
Well, let's see. We talked about the ships. No. I think when you look at, I think the one thing I didn't hit on is workforce development, and so um, I think it's important. I'm a huge fan of former Secretary Marty Walsh. He's a mayor's mayor. I think that's when he's mayor of Boston. I watched his leadership, especially with the marathon bombing, et cetera. So uh, Marty Walsh he used to come down to Newport News with Congressman Scott, and they always went to um, our community college, Virginia Peninsula Community College, as well as our apprenticeship school. I think we looked at basically we need more ships. Well, you need people who are going to build those ships. And I think there's a national sort of deficit of skilled laborers across the country, whether it's construction, steel, pipe fitters, et cetera. So the question that we have to do, and as Newport News, we're putting a lot of money into developing these pipelines. Congressman Scott calls it cradle to college or cradle to the arts or cradle to the actual trades. But how can we as a city, as a region, make sure that we fully fund our apprenticeship, technical schools, et cetera? Because I don't think for a lot of people, it makes sense to high school, then I go to college, I take out 200 grand in debt, and then my starting salary is 45,000. If you do a high paying union job apprenticeship model, you come out making, I think it's like $72,000 with healthcare, with a retirement, a pension that you don't have to fund, with healthcare for your family. And so I think it is incumbent upon all leaders, but especially myself, city council, et cetera, to ensure that we fund those programs, because for a lot of people, the college path doesn't make any sense anymore, especially with all this high debt. But the way that we can get ahead is workforce development. So I'm a huge fan of labor, and I'm going to continue to pound into everyone's head that we need more and more apprenticeship models. And we need to make sure that we have the workforce that is able to compete on a global scale, because globalism, COVID changed everything. It's not just Newport News versus Brandon Scott in Baltimore. Like that's not what it is. It's truly is a global economy. And I think from a national security perspective, we have to ensure that we have the most skilled workforce to compete.
Thank you for bringing that because Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, their research center at Stanford just came out with a report about underscoring more about skill sets and less about degrees.
Yes.
And they talked about these type of skill sets that are so needed, especially when it comes to education security, economic security, and strategic competition.
Mm-hmm.
How can we make the American people more competitive in these domains? So I like the pipeline program that you're talking about. Now, just kind of asking you a little bit more about the programs that exist right now to
Yeah.
help build out these skill sets. Is there some sort of modernization that is needed when it comes to these programs, trying to make them just more competitive, just as competitive or more compared to our near peer competitors when it comes to making sure their programs are up to date when it comes as far as building out these skill sets that are needed to build things like ships.
No. So I had to look at my notes over there, but Congressman Scott, he helped to pass the America Completes Act, which basically create, I think, an additional 1 to 2 million more apprenticeships in the country. I think, and I think I keep going back and saying this, but when you really look at it, workforce development is going to be the thing that we invest in that now. We're going to reap the benefits of that in the next, 8 to 20 years. And I think we are falling behind China, Russia in this regard. And so from a city, from a local perspective, I will continue to make sure that we fund that, we make them our partnership. My favorite word is public-private partnerships, but that's really what it is. It's making sure that we connect the city of Newport News with the region, with the four-year universities, with the colleges, with the four-year community colleges, with the apprenticeship, with the employers, with the unions. All of that sort of comes together. And I love Mayor because Mayor is at the nexus of all of that. I'm the sort of clearinghouse that I can get everyone to the table. And that's what I appreciate.
So establishing some sort of like task force with different stakeholders to work on this.
Yeah, that sounds like the mayor's job every day.
Yeah, you're definitely the frontliners in all this. Yes, absolutely. Well, yeah, well, I want to thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity to speak with Diversity National Security Network about national security issues in the city of Newport News. This has just been such a treat. And you are now part of the DINSN family. So if you need any of us, to come out and support you, we're here to support you. And again, thank you so much. But do you have any final messages that you would like to let the DINSN community know about your work and in Newport News?
Of course. So first, I just want to say thanks again for the invite. I really do appreciate it. You've been a vanguard for me for many years, and it's always great to jump on the podcast. Looking forward to coming back. I think this work is very important. I think when you look at who is at the table when decisions are made, we have to ensure that all types of people from all walks of life are involved in this very, very important work. I think for a long time, underserved communities don't really go into this field due to lack of prestige or lack of money or maybe even lack of understanding. And I'm always here as a resource, as a bridge builder to those who want to talk about national security. So, Asha, I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor Jones. I appreciate it. Great. Okay. Good now.